I follow this channel called Motojitsu. It's really terrific. See, the other day, Fast Eddie was doing a show, doing a video, right? And he was wearing this jacket. And on the one hand, over his right breast, it said, you know, Fast Eddie. And on the other, he had a patch that said, shut up and practice. I thought that was terrific. I'm totally ripping him off with this video. Oh yeah, because it's a great motto. Oh yeah. See, when I was young, when I was a teenager, even into my 20s, I didn't understand the concept of practice. I really didn't. I didn't understand how essential practice is for everything, to get good at everything. Probably it was because I was very fortunate. I was a smart kid and I was naturally talented in a whole host of things. I had zero athletic talent, but intellectually, I had no limit, right? And because of that, I never internalized the notion of practice because everything came to me relatively easily. It was only when I got into my 20s that things started to get hard, which is quite natural because you rise to your level of incompetence, right? The Peter Principle. When I was young, of course, I was good. And so I would just go up on the levels until eventually I got into my 20s and I started failing because I had not learned how to practice. And you see, everything worthwhile in life requires practice. Absolutely everything. You want to get good at, say, math? You got to do problem sets. You want to pick up girls? Well, you got to do 100 approaches. You want to learn a language? Well, you have to do flashcards. Everything you want out of life requires practice, an enormous amount of practice, right? There are some people who say that to get good at an instrument, you need to practice it for 1,000 hours. I wouldn't be surprised, yeah. You need endless repetition over and over and over again. And here is, of course, the part that's hard for most people. You have to take the failures when you practice. Yeah, because if you think about it, the whole point of practicing is to fail. Think about it. You know, you practice something. You practice, say, calculus. You practice calculus and you do your problem sets, right? And you do, I don't know, 20 questions, and out of those 20 questions, you have 5 that are wrong. Well, what's going on there? See, you were learning calculus and you're doing your problem sets and you got 15 right, which is great, but 5 are wrong. And so you have to learn from those 5 mistakes. That's the point of practicing. Because that way, when you eventually become, say, an engineer, and you're building a building, and you need to do the calculus so that the goddamn thing doesn't collapse, well, you will have practiced calculus enough that your calculations as to the structural soundness of the building are going to be correct, so the goddamn thing isn't going to fall. That's why you practice calculus. Same with girls, for instance. There was a case, I forget where it was, if somebody emailed me or it was a comment I read on my channel, I forgot where it was, but there was this guy who was saying that, you know, he tried to approach one girl and she'd knocked him down. She'd like blown him off, right? And because of this one failure, the guy said that he wasn't going to approach another girl for another year. And so at this rate, you know, he'd be approaching, over 20 years, he'd be approaching 20 girls. And it's been in my experience, right, that, you know, over the course of 20 girls, you're going to get blown out, you know, most of the time. You know, shit, 9 times out of 10, easily. So he's going to go for decades with failure after failure. And of course, he's going to wind up with nothing. That's why you got to practice. Because see, the numbers are against you. They are. In everything worthwhile, the numbers are going to be against you. And so the only way to beat those odds is to keep on trying over and over and over again. That's why you got to shut up and practice. That's why you got to shut up and just do the grunt work. The grunt work that is practice. You do it long enough and enough times, and you're going to eventually succeed. Or let me rephrase that. You keep on practicing enough and you'll start to learn the tools for success. Because it's the rare guy who hits the home run first time at bat. It's the rare guy. And more often than not, when he does, it was lucky. It was goddamn fucking lucky. Or more often than not, see, he does hit the ball out of the park on the first try and it goes to his head and he doesn't know how to do it the second time or the third time. The guy who's constantly failing, who's going up to bat and swinging and missing, eventually he's going to start connecting. And more important, he's going to start connecting and he's not going to lose his shit. He's going to recognize that, yeah, he finally hit a home run, but it was, 100 failures, 1,000 failures before. And so for the next time at bat, he's going to recognize that he's going to have to give it his all. He's not going to rest on his laurels, is what I'm saying. See, because that's what happened to me. See, when I started out as a writer, as a novelist, I got really lucky really early on. It was a combination of me being very, very talented, and at the same time being at the right moment with the right people and just, timing, okay? But the fact of the matter is, in my writing career, I hit a home run first time at bat. I got a shit ton of money for my first book, and it was just lucky, yeah? And I didn't know how to handle it. And I let the opportunity slip through my fingers, yeah. And it was an issue that had I had more failures behind me, had I, swung 1,000 times before and kept on missing until I finally hit it, I would have known how to handle the situation. And it was because of my lack of practice. My lack of practice led me to get lucky first time at bat. And so a lot of times I'm here to tell you that the lack of practice, if you succeed despite your lack of practice, sometimes the end result is even worse than outright failure. Oh yeah. Now, as a grown man, I recognize that the failures and the period spent practicing were more important than the successes. The successes were great and all the rest of it, sure, but practicing to get good at something to the point where you are good and you are successful. I'm going to put this. You know how to handle it. That's what I'm trying to say. You're not going to be able to handle anything without practice. Like you guys know, I got a motorcycle recently. Oh yeah. And I've been, driving around here and there. It's a lot of fucking fun. Oh yeah. But like I said, I got a starter bike. I got a starter bike, a 250cc dual sport, and I'm practicing. Oh yeah. I'm practicing on this 250. It's not very fast. On the contrary, it's a little bit of a slowpoke, but that's good. Because I'm practicing, I'm getting better. I'm practicing and getting better to the point where in time, I'll be able to handle a 600, 800, 1000cc bike. I'll be able to handle going at 150 miles an hour, no problem. I'll be able to handle the emergencies that will arise when I'm driving a 1000cc bike at 150 miles an hour. Yeah, because I'm getting in the practice now. And this is something I wish I'd learned and understood when I was young. But the fact of the matter is, when you're young, you're very arrogant, especially to the degree that you're talented. When you're really talented and really smart, when you've got the world by the balls, that's when you start thinking to yourself that you don't need to practice, that you don't need to be humble, and that you don't need to be careful. You start thinking to yourself that, oh, I know better. I know better, I know what the fuck I'm doing, and fuck all off, old man, you don't know shit from Shinola. I know what's what. Oh yeah, because everything I do is a success. And that's when you get into trouble. I was riding the bike the other day. I wish I'd recorded this because it was really cool. I was riding the bike the other day, and I'm getting to a corner and I'm gonna make a left-hand turn, right? I'm getting to this corner, and here in Kharkov, the lights have like timers that tell you how many seconds are left before the light turns, which is very convenient, of course. Now, I'm seeing that it's got like 3 seconds left, and I'm thinking to myself, if I hit the gas, I'll make it. But the thing is, see, I couldn't see properly in either direction insofar as the cross street was concerned, because there was some trees and some buildings in the way. And I was like 3 seconds away, and I'm like, fuck it. And I stopped. I stopped because I was humble. And thank God that I did. Yeah, because a guy on the cross street, he saw the lights was turning too, and so he raced ahead of it. And he raced ahead of it and crossed me, or let me rephrase that, crossed the street that I was on, crossed in front of me where I was stopped at the light, crossed right over the point I would have been had I accelerated and tried to make it. You see my point, yeah? with practice and humility and recognizing that you need the practice, you start to realize your limitations and you start to safeguard yourself against disaster. Now, I'm talking about motorcycles here, but this applies to fucking everything, right? And it's the fact that you practice and start to learn your limitations and you start to bump up against them, sure. Try to push them forward, push your limits a little bit further every time. That's the nature of practice. And you have to do it, humble though it may be. And always be sure when to try to push those limits and when to stay firmly on this side. Again, about the motorcycles, right? The other day, right, I'm practicing figure eights, low speed figure eights in a parking lot. And I'm doing these low speed figure eights and I'm going really, really slow as I can. I'm trying to go almost at a walking pace, right? And the point is that, see, by doing these slow speed figure eights, I'll have more mastery over the bike at low speeds. Now, what happened in that practice session? I stalled the engine a bunch of times. Oh yeah, it was embarrassing, sure. I stalled out and you know, the bike, it might have been at an awkward angle a couple of times. I tipped over, right? I didn't drop the bike, of course, but you know, it's sort of like stalled and there I was, you know, 1 foot on the ground, trying to hold up the bike and feeling very foolish with the engine out, right? But there, it was perfectly fine that I was pushing my limits. Oh yeah, because, see, that's the beauty of practice. You can make a fool of yourself, make mistakes, and feel shamefaced and just a little bit ridiculous. And it doesn't matter. You gotta practice, because you don't wanna be tipping it over when you're actually out in traffic. You see what I'm saying? You don't wanna be stalling out when you've got like a bunch of trucks behind you, right? That's why you practice. Shit, this is like the second video in a row that I don't feel that I'm putting the point across of how I want to, you know. I mean, I look at my notes and it all seems all good and fine, you know, but like I'm kind of failing in this fucking video, actually. Which is kind of weird if you think about it, because I've done over 300 videos. Oh yeah, 350 I think, or some shit like that. Yeah, over the last couple of years, that's how many videos I've done. And see, with all this practice, I'm still fucking up. And these videos ought to be second nature, but I'm still fucking up. You see? The only way to reduce the number of fuck-ups is by practicing, because you have to understand, you will have, at your best, a certain percentage of successes and a certain much larger percentage of failures. You're never going to be able to eliminate failure. And point of fact, failure is going to be the default mode of your life. In everything that you do, your successes are few and far between. But if you practice, you get to the point where more often than not, you might succeed. And that's the best you can hope for. So whatever it is that's important to you, whatever it is that you're doing with your life, whatever it is that you hope to achieve, you got to shut up and practice.